let's just jump right in. I haven't practiced art, A-R-T, as a painter or performer in quite some time, but I still remain very engaged and indebted to the arts through filmmaking, storytelling, invention, innovation, and all the different array of tools and styles and modes that have formed a coalescence in my own work. I never felt comfortable with any one medium. I wrote poetry, I sculpted, I painted, I performed, and I think all of it helped to build a sense of awareness of being in the world a priori. And it is that type of autopoiesis or autopoetic existence that I still love so much. So thank you, Moises, for bringing that up earlier in our one-on-one discussion prior to starting this meeting today. Transhumanist art itself, as I created it and defined it, is all about engaging the world, not just the human, but the whole ecosystem, in search of how histories and the many different interpretations of histories connect to an array of possible futures. Every future has a history or histories, and there is not one future that is the direction we will be headed as creators, as innovators, as thinkers, but there's many different preferred futures. So what I mean by that is you can change your direction at any time and seek out differences and opportunities and alter and shift. And I think that is like a dance. It's a creative dance of life that many artists, especially the abstract expressionists, really got into. After the Impressionists, the abstract expressionists took ideas and just kind of switched things around. And Jackson Pollock is one of the most known for that in his work, and considering taking the art itself, the image, off the canvas. What a great idea was that, to turn it into life. And then so we had happenings and performances and capro and the non-happenings. And today we're at a point where we're more interested in the history of philosophy than we are in the history of artistic movements. And I noticed that among many creative individuals, and I think it's part of the academic structure that entices artists to consider philosophy and the philosophers that are mostly a group of a conglomeration of thinkers, but they're not the only ones. Most philosophers delve into the sciences and technologies to come up with their theories. So I think it's really important that artists research artists that precede them and the current works that are going on today, rather than relying on the intelligentsia of the academic philosophers who are put on a pedestal as being the final word on what is or is not in their particular and very well-written, clever ideologies. The issues that we're facing include how they affect personal basis and multiple social, economic, and political areas. That's what most artists are thinking about today and have historically thought about. It's not just painting a pretty picture or doing a beautiful ballet or writing a marvelous film script or developing an AI that looks pretty and morphs with animation. All the stories that we tell reflect the era that we're in, or the epoch that we're in. Transhumanist art itself applies to a transdisciplinary discourse. It's not located just within the arts. And it's not limited, and it can be applied to boundless medium or approaches. It's not just one thing like AI or robotics or immersion or virtuality. What it does hold on to as let's say a platform or ground zero is foresight about the future, not just human-centric, but the whole future of all life forms, whether they are living biological agency or non-agency or non-biological objects. And I think that ties into the object that we're considering in the arts. There's a worldwide landscape of global movement of transhumanism, and it continues to grow and develop. And we might say, why? Why is this growing? And we'll touch on that in a moment. It's a highly distinguished to identify technologies that change society and pinpoint sciences that uncover new potential. So that's really extremely important. And philosophers have wrestled with the human condition. What does it mean to be human? What are we supposed to be doing? What is human nature, identity, consciousness, overcoming odds, especially the issue of personhood and identity in mind study or mind theory by many philosophers. I refer to these odds as the human condition, what we're trying to overcome, the inadequacies, the inequities, the unfortunate thing that we live on this beautiful planet that's a speck of dust in our solar system. And there is still continues to be conflict, wars, starvation, hunger, medical differences, people who don't have human rights, basic rights. That disturbs me on a daily basis. And as a transhumanist artist, it has formed the core of my own work. Let's touch on some philosophers that I noticed in reading about many of the artists involved in this project here with Sepideh. It's really interesting to look at who we're talking about and how we're talking about these people and whether we really understand. An example, I think that stands out very strongly is philosopher Michael Foucault, who is often referred to in the philosophy of and arts, based on his philosophy on the assumption that human knowledge and existence are historical and that what is most human about man is his history. Foucault was not aware of gender equity. In fact, Foucault, if you really read his work, was anti-feminist. He actually did not like the company of women. So why do women in the arts refer to Foucault? I mean, I think we ought to expose Foucault for his foolishness. Now, granted, Foucault did a lot for the mentally ill and the imprisonment of and enslavement of those who had mental problems, and he saw the conditions of that, and that I think is his greatest work. But we certainly need to see the other side, the underbelly, in this era of identity and gender preferences and pronouns and who we want to be seen as. So I have to say I'm not a Foucault follower. And he was in the 20th century, in the late 20th century. So diversity, equity, and inclusiveness were not things that he considered. Alternatively, Bruno Latour seems to have gained insight and vision on all elements of life being a hybrid network of actors. And so Bruno Latour was a little bit more informed. Reza Negastami focuses on intelligence and spirit and applies artificial general intelligence, AGI, without first understanding what AGI is, and credits the coiners or the founders of AGI to individuals who did not coin it or found it. And in fact, the credit goes to Peter Voss and Ben Gertzwell. So we need to understand what AGI is, artificial general intelligence, and how it can integrate on serious levels. David Lewis argues that identity theory is in the mind. So we do need a mind to exist. And I noticed in some of the conversation with artists that there's an issue of identity and where is the mind and Cartesian theory and duality and all of that. And that continues to be a big issue, especially when we transfer into virtual environments and coexist in the biosphere here in the material world and virtual environments. David Lewis, I think, had something on his mind. And I think that that was quite good. They mention a philosopher, Catherine Malibu, is an example of philosophy gone wrong, painting itself into a corner. And that's something we all need to be careful about and something we have all done. So I'm not pointing a finger here. I have done it myself. I've painted myself into a corner. I'm going, uh-oh, what am I talking about? Or what am I trying to express creatively? Because I've eliminated a way to explain it on the other side. So it's really important to look at both sides of issues when we talk about them. The term plasticity is not about philosophy in Dr. Malibu's work. Plasticity happens to do with the brain, cognition, and aging. And we lose our plasticity, our flexibility, our adaptation, our ability to resolve when we lose the neurons, or neurons go astray, or they break down at their core. So our brain does not connect properly or healthfully, let's say, it's a better term. Heidegger touches on an immediate issue of life and human evolution, understanding the difference between being and beings. And there is a difference. When you're being in the world, you're aware, you're awake, you're part of the world. Beings is more of a noun. And so being of life is a process. And I think that Heidegger was really smart when he did that. So many of the technologies that we use today, such as AI, VR, AR, virtual worlds, interconnectivity, robotics, algorithms, whatever interface or illustration of installations that we cooperate with, offer an experience. And they're actually developed by transhumanists. And I think that history has little mention or is often forgotten. So if we take a look at games, looking back at the original games, they were on the move, right? So games go back to really early gaming, and we need to open up and understand where those games came from and what was the moo, M-O-O. And how did games start developing? And even Do Ex Machina, which is a bit dystopian film, is based on a concept, a transhumanist concept that went awry and touches on Moises's concern about what if the dystopian future takes over with massive technologies that influence and control people. That's not a transhumanist world. That's a very fascist world that we certainly don't want to exist in. When we think of metaverse and virtual worlds, it was transhumanists who first built these out in not only Second Life, but in virtual habitats. Philip van Nederveld and Martin Rothblatt, and the list goes on, Alif Avatar. It's really amazing to think about this. Blockchain, something that we're very familiar with today. Blockchain is based on the Merkle tree, and Ralph Merkle is a transhumanist. Encryption and security, Ralph Merkle, and a group of transhumanists early on in the late 1980s who understood the future of the World Wide Web becoming the Internet of Things and the interconnectivity and concern about artificial intelligence. Computer scientists, philosophers, futurists, science fiction authors, artists were all early transhumanists in the 1980s and 1990s who built out these technologies that we're using today. Mainly artificial intelligence, I think, is the most known one. And we realize that artificial intelligence is in everything we do. It's in our cars, it's in our computers, it's in our refrigerators, it's in our vacuums. Marvin Minsky is the father of artificial intelligence. He developed the idea of neural nets, and he was at MIT. He was a leading transhumanist. So we need to understand the tools we're using today as artists. Where did they come from? What was the purpose or intention of those who created these technologies and science? And are we giving them credit? Or are we going to just rely on the philosophers because it's postmodernist rhetoric to include philosophy as ever so important in the arts? So video cybernetics is so important too. Cybernetics was developed by Norbert Weiner. Norbert Weiner did not create the term cyborg. It was Nathan and Manfred Kleins. Manfred Kleins coined the term cyborg, not as a feminist political position as Donna Haraway espouses so beautifully, but incorrectly. The cyborg was a concept for going into space because of cybernetics and space exploration, space travel, and the fact that the human body would not tolerate the radiation from the sun and zero gravity on our bone structures and our muscles. So we needed a different type of body or structure to coexist outside this biosphere. So let's ask, why does art exist? What is its purpose? Well, it touches us, it reaches our lives. It's the main connection we have to communication and vision. Art tells a story. It tells our personal story in the works that we each do individually, no matter what medium or field that we're in. And it's a way to express our doubts, our fears, our concerns, our loves, our joys, our hope. And that is the beauty, and that is at the core of humanity. And I think that John Lennon said it best. Love. What is life? It's love. All we need is love. And through our art, whether it is something that causes people to be disturbed, that's great. Maybe people need to be disturbed. Maybe people need to be told, look on the other side of things, the other angle, and find out what disturbs us and why it disturbs us, and turn it into something we can understand. If there is a possible future that is run by a fascist control of surveillance, why is that? And how can we counter that? So we need to be very smart. As for issues of nature and human nature and what it means to be human and in nature and normalcy and all these social terms that are placed on us and political influences and feminism, transgender, LGBTQ and personal pronouns and identification, the arts has always been deeply involved. If you go back to the earliest artists of time, you will see where they tried to overcome the political dictums and the rulers on to gain rights, to gain freedoms, to be able to express themselves. And Shakespeare managed to get through the staunch critics by offering humor in his work and looking at the idiosyncratic elements of being human and our folly and the mistakes that we made. So if you look at the earliest sculpture to the earliest paintings, and of course they were usually religious or spiritual in some way, but they told stories about what people worshiped and how people felt about things. But the art movement that I love the most is abstract expressionism, because it is an abstraction of reality. And my second that I love the most is electronic arts, because it brought in kinesthetics, it brought in the computer, it brought in digitality, it brought in virtual reality and games. It changed the art world forever, from being over there to being everywhere, ubiquitous. And many artists today are not familiar with one of my favorite books on my bookcase. It's called Art of the Electronic Age. And I hope you do read it. The author is Frank Popper, and he is a theoretician and an art critic. And it's a beautiful book that tells the history of where we are today in the world of digital immersive installations, artificial intelligence, image making, telepresence. The only area it doesn't cover is bioart, because bioart wasn't available at the time, because we didn't have transgenesis, genetic engineering, stem cell cloning, any type of mitigation or intervention into cellular structures early on in electronic arts where we do today. So a transhumanist art has been at the forefront of the future for decades, not just talking about a post-human, which it did very early on, but it overcame the cyborgization that academic kind of ruled over and dismissed the transhuman for the cyborg. And I understand that it was, a thing that we need to cling to our writing and see it, but I think that's changing. I think that we're realizing that a cyborg is a very interesting term, but we need to pay attention to Nathan Klein and Manfred Klein, who developed the concept and the term, and understand that I'd rather be a transhuman than a cyborg, because I love life and I want to create. A cyborg is a machine, remember that. And to give it a feminist approach is a philosophical coup. Very interesting. And Miss Haraway, or Dr. Haraway, achieved great fame from doing that. But I would challenge what she really wrote about in the Cyborg Manifesto, as she really was writing about the transhuman, not the cyborg. So within the realm of the future, critics of transhumanism, whose politics polarize longevity or any type of augmentation or enhancement, get it a little bit wrong. They're right in many ways. Yes, human enhancement is important, augmentation, extending life, being healthier, more humane. Humanity is at the core of transhumanism. It's not about overtaking the world and creating superhumans that leave the rest of humanity behind. It has nothing to do with the elite or the haves and the have-nots. Transhumanism is comprised of many people who are just as much in need as anyone else. In fact, our movement is growing in Africa, where there's a project I'm working on, which I'll explain to you all soon. So I just want to say that and I'm going to read this here, so let me look at a note. The Transhumanist Alliance of Physiology and Technology campaigns for freedom to choose advocacies that stand apart from normalized narratives of binary thinking. And I think we can all agree on that. If not, please put it in the chat and I'll address it. So that is where we are today in the world for everyone. We don't want to be called white, black, right, wrong, yes, no. We want to see the diversity and the opportunity, and that just because you may believe in God doesn't mean that that you also hate cryonics. You can still be a Christian and support cryonics or human enhancement. It doesn't mean that just because you love AI, you want to be an upload and lose your body. These things are very staunch claims put on transhumanism that are absolutely incorrect. And you say, why? Why were these claims made if they weren't written or stated? Well, journalists like to use hyperbole. And so do academics. We do use hyperbole to get attention. It's the chapter title or the splash page in the news. They want to live forever. They want to be immortal. They want to take over the world. They're all Jewish, whatever it is, these things that are said. It's just like, what? I mean, what? It's absurd, but they sell papers and they get attention, and it creates a good argument for bioconservatives who want to push their, excuse me and forgive me, Christian white male dominance over everyone from their political clubs, which I don't like, but I do support white males, black males, yellow males, green males, and I support the male gender 100%, as I support the female gender and the in-betweens and the transgender. So what we need is more diversity, not just one particular slice of the pie telling us or creating our rules and rights for us. And transhumanism has always been very much opposed to that type of dictatorship, that type of determination on who we are and what we're supposed to be. In fact, transhumanism, early on, we talked about this issue of what is normal, the box for what you're supposed to be as a human, and we tore that down. So the ideas and practices interlace a balanced supportive framework that recognizes the diverse characteristics of humanity and other life forms and the potential of AGI, android, post-human, and other sapience. Now, I said sapience, not sentience, and I wanted to make this clear. Sentience means having information and knowledge, but that does not mean that you're wise or can feel. My desk, I don't want to kick because I respect the design of my desk and the designer who created it. I don't want to kick it, but it's not alive. But is it not alive? On a molecular nanoscale, if you look at my wood French desk, you will see things moving. So if it's moving, it's got to have some kind of connectivity to the ecosystem. So everything in the universe is alive on some level, whether it has, human agency or life or identity, or whether it's an object. It still exists. And if it exists, it has some component, if not the microorganisms that are sitting on the top and all the bacterium. And then so I argue that reaching into the level-headed transhumanist framework of principles, models, and rights that generated morphological freedom, for example, the proactionary principle, the transhumanist fact, the H+ DAO, and new strategies for long-term incentives create a threshold for engaging change, and in doing so, sloughs off the scales and barnacles that negate potential. It is imperative that human and non-human rights continue to evolve at the speed of information through impartial decision-making, and the sooner the better. So that's my introduction to you all. And you can take from it what you like, and I'm going to show some images in just a moment. Is it functionality a means of reciprocating the dialectic that critic and ontological? Let's not do too many philosophical terms here. Let's keep it real simple. Recuperating the dialectic that ontic, not ontological. Okay, so Jay White, let me ask you what you mean by that. Jay White, are you here? So
I can explain. Sorry.
Okay. Yeah.
I was just kind of commenting as you were talking. That's all. Sorry. They're not direct questions. I suppose fundamentally, what seems quite strange is that your critique. I mean, transhumanism at its basis has to be both theoretical and practical. And I suppose what you're saying is that one should just choose the practical without the theoretical. However, if we are to critique any movement or any ideology or any philosophical movement, we have to understand its philosophy. And in order to do that, we need to understand philosophy, right? And so pushing out the kind of baby with the bathwater, as you kind of did at the beginning, in a sense, what it does.
Oh, that's a line I always use, so that's really kind of funny. But no, I did not. Transhumanism is a philosophy. It's a philosophy. It's the philosophy.
Yeah. Okay. And it seems as though there are quite kind of your attack at the beginning was, well, we should be done with philosophy.
No, I did not say that at all.
Okay, for artists.
Okay, let me clarify that. Very good. Thank you so much, Jay White. Philosophy is important. Philosophy is about what is life. Who are we? What are we? Philosophy forms the synthesis of gaining knowledge from asking questions about why we're here. Philosophy is imperative. I spoke about certain philosophers that students often mention and might misconstrue, and they mention philosophers over mentioning artistic movements and artists who preceded them. Artists maybe that created the technology that they're using in their artworks, artists that developed the theoretical approaches that they are using to do their work. And this has never happened before. This is new within the late 20th century. Prior, artists always talked about art movements, the Impressionists, the Modernists, the maybe the Cubists, the Fauvism, Expressionism, Abstract Expressionism, electronic arts, digitality, cybernetic art, all these different genres are very important. And I think they need to precede certain postmodernist philosophers who we think are more intelligent than the artists who created the movements. So,
and what does that relation have to transhumanism? I don't understand.
This is about transhumanism.
That seems just like an ad hominem attack on those particular philosophers. Doesn't it seem like, or should it that an artist should turn to another philosophy, which is transhumanism? Is that what you're? I don't see the point in attacking, which I agree with you, has become fashionable within the art world to kind of
it is. Yeah. Well,
but
I
that
think you're
doesn't seem really
misconstruing. You can't argue with me here. This is my session. So I'm still giving my presentation. I was just giving you a moment to ask you what you meant because I wanted to. Okay, so philosophy is important in the world of understanding and asking questions about existence. Okay, that's what philosophy is, about existence. You can Google what is philosophy. Different philosophers have different theoretical approaches to what is existence. Why are we here? What does it mean? The most current philosophy that is interesting is philosophy of mind, because mind ties into AI. So it's very popular right now. And it's really quite, it's a wonderful approach. Artists, transhumanist art is not transhumanism. I want to make that very clear. Transhumanist art is about creativity and the arts, regardless of the medium, film, sculpture, games, VR, AR, installations, performance, all those things can be transhumanist art. Transhumanism is a philosophy. There are two different things. Transhumanist art, to be transhumanist art, it would have to agree in principle with the tenets of the philosophy. The transhumanist philosophy is looking at visionary critical thinking to improve the human condition. So if you called yourself a transhumanist artist and you wanted to kill people with a machete, that would not be transhumanist art, because that would be based on killing and dystopian and causing fear and hate. Alternatively, if you were a transhumanist artist, you want to create an architectural building that was built with trees and organisms and bacterium that became an ecology itself to promote a diversity and collaboration and cooperation between life forms, that would be transhumanist art. So transhumanist art follows the philosophy of transhumanism, but it doesn't say you have to believe in transhumanism, but it can't be transhumanist art if it is in conflict with that philosophy. Now, transhumanism is very much in cohort with posthumanism as a philosophy, and they're often misconstrued. They share so much together. Posthumanism and transhumanism are often intertwined and share ideas, and there's a very blurry edge between them. There is a difference between the vision and the knowledge of technology. I would argue that the transhumanism has a very strong background in academics, in writing, in works, in information about technology, where posthumanism does not. Transhumanism has a very strong knowledge area in biotechnology, nanotechnology, artificial intelligence, etc., that posthumanism doesn't. So there's a difference in the type of people that it attracts. Transhumanism attracts scientists, technologists, people in the biomedical fields, people interested in curing disease, longevity, space exploration, and extending life. Posthumanism is looking at the post-human, the future human, and often tries to define it like I have in my work, and we ought not to be doing that, but I still do it anyway, because no one knows what a post-human will be. That's a future, it's post-human. And one of the core issues there is, will we ever be post-human? And so that's where I prefer transhumanism, even though the philosophies cross over, because transhumanism is about human, a biological animal in transition, in its transformation, in merging with technology, etc. Where posthumanism is just looking at posthumanism beyond human, beyond today. So it's transhumanism is more based on fact and science and research. Posthumanism, not so much. I hope I explained that. Let me look at another question. So Mafta says, so we are to emphasize the practitioners, not the theorists. No, no. I hope I cleared that up. Theory, I'm a theorist. And having every artist has his or her or their or this or whatever term you want to use, theory. That's why we're artists. We build our works based on some vision that we have, and that vision has a theory. And if you're in academics, you have to write about it. So it becomes a theory. And so theories are important, how they're put into practice, and that's where your art stands apart. Now, an artist's work, as I said earlier, the medium doesn't matter. Your work could be a theory. It could be a written theory. Your work could be a spoken theory. Your work could be a visual theory. It can be a theory. Could there be good, evil, chaotic, and orderly transhumanism? Well, I think that's really a great question, Mafka, a really brilliant question. In the world, we say we don't want binary, good, bad, black, white, yes, no, right, wrong, but there still is chaos. And in the world, there will always be entropy. Things, the degradation, the erosion, that's how the universe works. That's how the ecosystem works. The universe is expanding and collapsing. We have black holes. We have wormholes. We have a universe that explodes and implodes on itself. So the issue is not so much chaotic or good and evil. It's more that it's changing, and change is often considered to be bad or evil. But in nature, you could say, is Mother Nature evil if she, let's anthropomorphize Mother Nature, causes floods and tsunamis and earthquakes and fires and destroys life? No, I don't think Mother Nature is evil. I think that Mother Nature is stretching and yawning, and the earthquake is the crust, the mantle of the earth stretching. Hurricanes, there's different things that cause them. So I would not say Mother Nature is evil. Human beings is slightly different. And that gets into a very fuzzy area. Can someone be evil and be transhumanist? I would say probably, and I'm going to qualify this, probably only if the person is insane. And you could say, well, is evil insanity? Well, if you have to get into neurology and biology on that level, if innately we're born as humans as a blank slate or with a genetic heritage in our hereditary genetic makeup, and we learn to share and be good people, we'll probably continue to be good people and share unless we have a mental breakdown or a psychosis. And schizophrenia does happen, and bipolar does happen, and many people do have it, or depression. They're not evil, it's just that the mechanism in the brain is not functioning at a level that would create that peace of mind. There's less dopamine or less serotonin, and that would cause things to go awry. You could say George Manson or Putin or Hitler are evil. We're evil. And maybe that's true. Maybe there is an evil side, but is that ego rather than evil? And is their ego so narcissistic and so large that they have no sense of humanity, that they have no compassion or empathy for other living beings or life forms? Then we give it the name evil. Does the concept produce problems of transhumanist goals? No, the issue with entropy and extropy, the first transhumanist organization was called Extropy Institute, and extropy being the opposite of entropy, meaning constantly expanding and growing and improving. The idea of transhumanism is to continually improve on oneself. And I'm sure most of us here say, oh, I did something yesterday, I wish I'd done it differently, or I did something last night or last week, and now I have better knowledge and better understanding of my own psyche and meaningfulness, and I could do it different next time. So it's, being a participant in the world and trying to do good. Okay, so now I'm going to go to something else to switch. Oh, hello, a little side step. I want to share fortune. Okay, I'm going to read that later, but I'm going to screen share, but let me pull up. I'm going to go through several PowerPoints and focus on key slides, okay? And I want to leave enough time for open discussion, because I know Jay White probably wants to get back at me. I see you sitting there and have something more to say. No, I love this dialogue. It's really great. But I think that if you just take little nuggets of what I'm saying out of context, you would think that I'm opposed to philosophy and the arts. Absolutely not. What I'm opposed to is artists not using their own theories and relying on Foucault, or especially, you know, or relying on Bruno Latour, yes, fine, or relying on them to have their theory. Why not rely on other artists for theories? And I'm going to mention some artists who are very famous, who have written theories. And so let's get to that in a moment. So I'm going to screen share first so you'll see yourself, and forgive me for this messiness. I'm not the most adept at doing this here. So I'm going to share and pull up this and run it. Again, I'm going to go through these rather quickly and just focus on certain things that I think are important for this lecture. So freedom to choose nature is really part of transhumanism that I think is very apt today. It's something that we all want to choose who we are and our place in the world, or non-place in the world, or non-existence. If you don't want identity, that's your choice. The foresight to be able to understand where we're headed has always been at the core of transhumanism, right, as I said. The technologies, virtual reality, robotics, all these things are very important. I'm going to turn this off so it doesn't play. Sorry, there's a, turn that down. So a case study, if you look at freedom in the world, social norms change over time, but one element is constant. People want to be free from discrimination, dogmas of normalcy. Many would opt for genetic liberty over genetic legacy. Others focus on AI risks and rewards. So if you look around the world, who is really free? Partially free and not free. And what do I mean by free? Having the right to just exist as a person or non-person in the world without a government or ruler or some kind of law telling them what they're supposed to be. That's really something that I think about a lot. Let's skip this slide, it's not important. I want you to see risks outweigh confidence in being able to address them, and areas in the world where you look at the fully prepared to address potential artificial intelligent risks. And here, major or extreme concern about potential AI risks. Germany, that fascinates me. China scares me a little. But if you look at France, Australia, United Kingdom, United States, we're up there both. That is because artificial intelligence in the United States came about through, of course, through the University of Illinois with brain-computer integration in the 1950s. And later in the 1970s, Marvin Minsky and John McCarthy, and then it built the first department specifically for AI. And it's a big thing here, but it's a big thing everywhere. We're ubiquitous. We're not just bound by these boundaries of countries. AI is everywhere. Okay, so here, I just want to make sure that this is muted and doesn't start. People are living longer. This is something that is very important. The population growth is decelerating. We used to be concerned about too many people in the world. So why do we want to have avatars and uploads and games and different identities and actually live longer and fight off disease? Well, one issue is that our species may be declining. And that's something that is being seriously talked about in countries like Japan and in certain areas of Europe. We want AI for good. And in order to have artificial intelligence to good, to help all of life forms, to help even the planet be healthier, we need to establish the algorithms, the codes early on, so that when AGI does come about, or superintelligence or the singularity, we're not off our game too much. So this is something that transhumanism thinks about: human rights, Maslow's hierarchy of needs, the freedom of nature, And that, in a nutshell, is what I wanted to show there, which I already talked about. I wanted you to see it right there because those are the key concerns, and they ought to be for all of us around the world. Instead of population growth, there's population decline. There is certainly climate pollution that we really need to deal with immediately, and hopefully AI will help us do that more ardently, and nanotechnology through nanorobotics to clean up some of the mess that is created. And as artists, we can do that. There's no question about it. So here I'm going to show you my work first, and I'm going to go into other people's work. My work is, and I'll explain this in a nutshell, and I hope it's understood. I started out as a fine artist. I have my Bachelor of Fine Arts in Painting and Performance. So I did very large paintings, and I still love painting, and that's why I love abstract expressionism. I love to go to museums and galleries and look at beautiful large paintings, and I have them around my house. And I truly still love painting. But I became a filmmaker, and I worked in High 8. And then I went to a conference where there was people working in VR and video and teleportation or telepresence. And this was in 1979. So how many decades ago is that people were actually working? And I bought the book that I mentioned, Art of the Electronic Era. And I realized that painting was beautiful and I loved it. And I was a performer on stage and in performance art. I loved that too, but there was something else missing and I needed to change my work. Now, just so you know, as a performance artist, I performed in places like the Amazon jungle with the natives in the 1970s. I performed inside a volcano on the island of Maui in Haleakala. I performed at Red Rocks Amphitheater in Colorado. It's where musicians play. It's quite beautiful. I performed on top of a building at Grace Jones's home. If you're into music, you would know who Grace Jones is. I performed in the ocean, in the Atlantic Ocean for 3 months out at sea. So there's different areas in the environment that I love to sculpt my body into the formation, or do the dance performance, a poetic piece. And I love that. So I'm very much an environmentalist in that stance. I love the beauty and the sanctity of the environment. And yeah, Mother Nature can be a bitch, but I think that it's still beautiful. I left that world in 1979 because I realized there was this whole thing called virtual reality, computers, gaming was just starting to happen. This is before 1980. So eventually I became interested in biology and bioart. And I wasn't included in that environment as a transhumanist. In fact, I was intentionally restricted from being part of the bioart community, which is kind of funny today because now they're doing the same thing I was doing back then. But they didn't like transhumanism. They thought we shouldn't be augmenting our bodies. We should just augment butterflies or worms or cells and build structures like Symbiotica A in Australia. But I stuck to it, and I fell in love with looking at prosthetics and robotics and narrow AI and haptic systems. And my concern about life was because I became very ill and I almost died, and I was living in Japan and performing in Japan, and a woman saved my life. And she spoke English and called the ambulance, and I only had a few minutes. I was hemorrhaging to death. And the surgeon cut me open and cured my disease, and I survived, but I never forgot that. And it was a major turning point for me, because when you're at the height of your career and you're performing around the world and doing all this wonderful stuff, and you think, oh, nothing's going to happen, something does happen. It just kind of switches your head. And we've all experienced this on some level in our lives. So that's nothing profound. But it was profound for me as an artist because it caused me to become interested in technology of the future and biotechnology of the future, and to think about, what if I had died, my body died, but my brain was still active? Why couldn't I have a different body to put my brain into? Why would I have to die just because I had this disease that was killing me and the doctors were trying to save my life, when my mind was still active? And I thought about Stephen Hawking in his condition with ALS, Lou Gehrig's disease, using a computer to communicate before he passed recently. But for years, he couldn't move except for a little finger or to talk through the electronic voice. And I thought of all the people who had gone to war, who came back without arms or legs or, disfigured. And then I thought about, when I was 11 years old, I had a tumor growing in my skull, eating up my skull, my bone structure. And my surgeon was in Chicago, and he took out half of my jaw. So I didn't have this part of my face. And fortunately, I was young enough that it grew back. Thank goodness, but I have all false teeth over here, but it grew back. But in the doctor's office in Chicago, I saw people with massive deformities that didn't have an eye or had their nose on this side of the face, or, just differences. I don't like the word deformities, but let's say differences like mine. I didn't have this part of my face. So, I learned early on, but then it hit me in 1980. Wow. I really want to devote my creative talents not to performing or creating films, but working in video and electronic arts and designing a future human body or post-human body. So that's what this is. Okay, so it's a replacement body if you want a physical material body in this biosphere. And it's an advancement in AI and prosthetics, and it would be for people who lose their body or go into cryonics or need a second body or want a second body. And in the post-human future, we could very well have numerous bodies that we upload in or change into, and especially with nanotechnology. And here you have Robert Friedis's book on nanomedicine, and Eric Drexler, who is the father of nanotechnology and molecular engineering in that regard. What if we had nanorobots going into our bodies and cleaning up damage and doing all this work? That excited me, having had this disease that was literally killing me. And so I really fell in love with this idea. So I put together a team of different people across skills. For philosophy, I had Dr. Max Moore, nanomedicine, evolutionary biology, nanotechnology, artificial intelligence. These are all the founders of these ideas. Max Moore wrote The Philosophy of Transhumanism. Michael Rose is the first person to extend the life of an insect. Greg Fay is the first to create frozen alternative organs and extend the lifespan of men through dealing with their thymus. Ralph Merkle wrote The Merkle Tree, which is the basis of blockchain and also encryption. Marvin Minsky is the father of artificial intelligence. Alexander Shasa-Cheslenko, who is not with us today, he is the founder of enhanced reality or virtual reality. Roy Walford was a gerontologist, leading thinker. Gregory Benford, physicist. Robin Hanson won the Ars Electronica Prize for his work in economics. Werner Vinci coined the term the singularity, so he is the father of the technological singularity. And Hans Moravec, robotics. He's the very famous roboticist. I put this team together, not because they were famous, but because they had the primary ideas. And I created Primo Posthuman in 1996. This is it today, and I look at the different ways that we could have an alternative body. And this body has a metabrain, and Jay White referred to this a little bit earlier. I think it was the metabrain. No, Moises did. We would be able to upload, download, and cross-load our mind, our identity or mind, through different systems or platforms or substrates. Through something like, my metabrain, or what Elon Musk is working on with his particular uploading technology. And other people are working on it too. So it's nothing new. It's the ideas, the theories have been around for a long time, but most of this comes from theoretical work of the key thinkers. And I worked with them, or they worked with me, or they helped me make this as honest and as feasible as possible. So, so I see the new human genre of could be post-human or could be something else, but being beyond our biological limitations and form, and also, you know, beyond all the different normalcy concerns that we have today. The second video is other transhumanist artists. So that's my work. I wrote the Transhumanist Manifesto in 1983. And I created the Transhumanist Art exhibition hall, and there was lots of Stellark exhibited there. Rachel Armstrong, who you'll see in just a moment, Martine Rothblatt, a number of different people. And it's, I closed it down in, I think, 2000, because I wanted to work on a project that deals with biotechnology. And so I've been working on that for a while, but now I'm going to be reopening the transhumanist art with the, not only the manifesto, but with the fact. There is a transhumanist fact that was on the web, on the World Wide Web in the 1990s and on the internet in 2000, but I closed that. I took it down, but I'm going to show it to you for historical sake. So here are some other artists who I really love. Stellark is a transhumanist, and he's a transhumanist artist. And I think he's probably, bar none, the most acknowledged artist in the world for his work that is transdisciplinary. He works with artificial intelligence, robotics, performance, installations, video, all types of internet interactive, I guess interactive art is what we'd say, but it's definitely electronic arts. And he actually has done bio art on himself. He grew an ear on his arm at one time. I think he's taken it off, but we collaborated in the past, and he was part of the early transhumanist arts from the late 1990s. So if you don't know Stellark, please look him up. He's wonderful, and he's a truly lovely person. Next is Stephen Valentine. Stephen Valentine is an architect, and he built this incredible design structure for the future of humans to be put in biostasis if they wanted to get new bodies, or they had a disease that couldn't be cured at the time. And this is on a plot of land in the United States in Texas. And it's a huge, huge property. And the design is quite beautiful. So it's cryo storage for DNA of endangered species, which I think is really interesting, and which ties into Dr. George Church's work, where he wants to bring back a big mammoth. So it's very interesting about preserving life forms in different species, and organ transplantation and chronic patients, a lot of biotech research. So he's a transhumanist artist, and we exhibited together in the late 1990s in New York City at a major event. So his work is, I would say, really seminal as far as architecture. Another architect who I truly value is Dr. Rachel Armstrong. She's a medical doctor and a PhD in arts, and she works with bioart. She builds buildings out of biomaterial. So if you look at her work right here, she has established theoretically, so here's a theorist, she established an alternative approach to sustainability that couples with computational properties of natural world to develop a 21st century production platform for the built environment, which she calls living architecture. And she's been recognized as a pioneer, to be sure. She's been featured, and she's listed as one of the smartest people in the world, 2014 Citizens of the Next Century list, Senior TED Fellow, and I believe she's still at Newcastle University, and she's someone who I respect, is a friend and a fellow fella or another transhumanist artist whose work I truly love. Another transhumanist artist is David Hansen. And David Hansen started out as a designer and he became a roboticist. And he founded Hansen Robotics in Hong Kong. Well, he founded it actually in a small town outside Austin, Texas. And then he moved to Hong Kong. He created the robot Sophia, which most of us know about, who's driven by kind of an advanced machine learning AI that is designed by Ben Goertzel, and who's a transhumanist, and David Hansen is a transhumanist as well, and this would be transhumanist art. Sophia, it's quite interesting. We've been on stage together, and it's kind of fun because she's a head, but they'll put different outfits on her. She gained citizenship in Saudi Arabia, which is kind of strange. Think about, rights, but it's very interesting to see the advances in robotics, and they don't have to be humanized like she is, but she's we're looking at avatars and human machine integration, and looking at even with Deus Ex Machina, she looked very human except for prosthetic parts that I thought were quite beautiful. Well, today people who have amputated arms or legs through war, injury, or disease, their prosthetic parts are beautiful, stunning, and I'm sure it's some of them work more effectively than human parts, and some of them, very painful and difficult. So maybe not a first choice, but certainly we're headed in that direction in some way. And the last one I'm going to mention is Martine Rothblatt. And she is a transhumanist artist. We first met in I think it was the late 1990s. She is an inventor. She created Sirius Radio, which, as you know, she doesn't own it, she sold it. She also has created a medical institution. She is the first to grow, actually, maybe not grow, but print 3D organs. And she was just at a conference recently showing a 3D lung that she grew. And it's a fact that many people need transplants, and they have to rely on someone to die to get the organ from the dead person put into their body so that they can live. And it's very generous of people who do donate their organs so that other people can live. But it's also a very strange thing, and I think that Martine's approach as a visionary, a creative approach to this in growing organs is very artistic in the sense that it's kind of bio-art meets robotics. And so I can send you all these links if you want to see them, but she gave a talk at South by Southwest, which is kind of wonderful if you want to Google Martine Rothblatt and South by Southwest. She talks about mind uploading, and her theory is B-ism, and she's a transhumanist who looks at the future human agency or sapience, feeling and thinking, as being able to travel through different substrates and modalities. So that's quite fascinating there. I think that was the last one here. Yes. Okay. I just want to go through these so that we have plenty of time to talk. Making art is something that I think that most transhumanist art focus on. And I say this for myself and others, especially the ones I mentioned, Stellark and Stephen Halpern and Rachel Armstrong and Martine Rothblatt and David Hansen and Ben Goertzel, is that the focus is really clear. For me, the focus was a prosthetic body and to back up the brain with an artificial mind that represented the human mind. So I looked at it in these very linear ways of body, brain, mind, and not the hierarchy, but the level of almost like mathematics of where it comes together. I've changed since then. This is very early. This is in the 1980s. 1990s. Remember, I designed this in 1996. So many of my ideas have come full circle and really questioned my own directive of body, brain, mind. And I looked at Henri Moore, whose sculpture I think is really, really beautiful. And I looked at what are we a synthesis of? And this ties into philosophy, and all philosophy, not just the transhumanist philosophy, but in and post-humanist philosophy. But in philosophy, the question is existence, to try to unpack and understand existence. And if we are the synthesis of molecules in our bodies and around us, our bionome, our exobodies, the patterns of the neurons in our brains as they're sending code and picking up code, and the continuity of what we do, our memories in our minds that can be uploaded or transferred or put onto PowerPoints or shared in Zoom, then it is a combination or a synthesis of science, technology, philosophy, and design. And that's how I look at it. It can't be just one or the other. It's this network, like a blockchain of these disciplines that come together. And I chose these 4 disciplines because I think they probably are the foundation for creativity. The science is broad. There's hard science and soft science. Technology is broad. There's many different types of technology. And philosophy, there's many different philosophical theories. And design is based on functionality. It's got to function. It's got to work. And no matter if you say, well, I do non-functional art, there's still a functionality to it. The science is a body of knowledge, a method of pursuing knowledge. So it's a skill. It's how we identify knowledge and pursue it and check it and test it. And the technology are the tools, the methods we use to build our creations. And the philosophy is the study of the knowledge and reality of existence. Why are we here or not here? Why are we objects or non-objects? What is it that we are? And design is the approach to achieve a unique expectation and to design it. And that's why I love design so much, because it's all around us. It's in everything a part of us, in the application of systems thinking. We're all part of a system, of systems. And so I really love that the formation of these atoms and how these atoms compile and form life. And I mentioned in our last meeting that one of my key theories that I truly love is by Dr. Lynn Margulies, who wrote the book, What is Life? And as a evolutionary biologist and largely a biologist, she identifies life formation coming out of the goo, the matter of chemistry, and how life emerged from that. So when I look at the society and beliefs and ethics and biopolitics and science and technology and marketing and how people approach ideas and how they discern what they want to believe in and what they find something that is disdainful or not acceptable, go through all these different fields to understand that until we come to a part where we see ourselves. And that's kind of a do-it-yourself type of approach that I love. And here's a list of artists that I've worked with that some do transhumanist art like Metalini and Stellark and Adam and Edward Katz and Marta Menendez, and Joe Davis was the founder of BioArt, and Suzanne Anker, its work is brilliant. So it's working with all types of mediums to come together to create this NEMBIC or nanobio info cogno sensibility. So I just wanted to go through that and to stop on this slide. Let me just go back for a second. That's my brain. And when I was working on my whole body prosthetic, I had various MRIs done of my brain to think about where this could go as far as if we upload or if we transfer our identity across different substrates, how would we do that? And I met with Randall Cohen, and Dr. Cohen coined the term whole brain emulation, and he's probably one of the leading thinkers in uploading itself. So it's kind of interesting to see where there are similarities and where there are differences in thinking about these things. And then to do the work, I had my own DNA tested through 23andMe, so I could see what my DNA looked like and where my connections were and identifying what type of body I wanted to create. And as you see, this is genderless, so you could choose your gender. Here's some other artists that work with bodies similar in my genre. There's Lucy McRae, and I think these are beautiful designs for different types of physical bodies. Remember, my body is not only physical, but it's also virtual and can upload or download across substrates or biosphere, cybersphere, chemistry, all that. These are physical, and they're quite unique. Interesting. I love these as well. Beautiful designs of what future bodies could look like in connectivity. Marilyn, Olivia, I love this, Oliver. I think this is so beautiful. And my favorite was this one right here. And if you could see it in person, it's just beautiful. You can see through it, and it's incredible sculpture, and it kind of reminded me of Henri Moore's sculpture, which I love for its abstract simplicity. This is Elif Ayatir. She's in Turkey, in Istanbul, and she's a transhumanist artist who designs the most incredible avatars for Second Life or the metaverse or gaming. And we both went to the same university to get our doctorates. And she really, her work is remarkable if you want to see someone who as an artist. And here is a person with a prosthetic leg that I think this design for it is really quite beautiful. And here's another one who wanted a prosthetic leg that kind of mimicked his motorcycle. And I think that, or its motorcycle, and I think that's really kind of attractive in a way. And back to Henri Moore, and the beauty of the abstraction can be what we want. It doesn't have to fit a human norm of what we think. I'm looking at time here, let me just check. Okay, and I'm going to just go through this quickly. My interest here is empathy and seeding innovation. So I think my work and the transhumanist arts, we're looking at empathy as a driving force for our projects because of the issues of technology of life procreation, and we know Roe versus Wade was just overturned in the United States, and the issue of life preservation. How long do you want to live? And should anyone tell you you can't take a therapy or a medical intervention to extend your life if you want to, or tell you that you can't die if you want to? So that ought to be a personal choice. So why is this important? I think is at the cusp of looking at transhumanist art right now, that the issue of what is unnatural and ethical and moral was brought up with the first test tube baby in 1978. And today, there are over 5 million people amongst us on this planet that were conceived in a petri dish. So these things are important, not to have people dictate to us what our life should be, what we should look like, how long we should live. And in order to set that example, I don't think it can be done through argumentation or disregarding the bioethicists and the leaders who want to make laws and rules for us, but by bridging this empathy gap. There is a lack of understanding about people's beliefs. And the more diverse we become as a species, as humans, transhumans, posthumans, or whatever, the more we're going to need this seriously. So I built out the H+ DAO, and I'm just going to run this for you. The H+ DAO is make, change, and make it happen. And this is a H+ DAO is a decentralized, autonomous organization that's going to be supporting artists and ideas and that truly address the transhumanist scope of empathy. And I'll show you one project in it that I'm very excited about. And it's right here. Our first project is going to be funding DigiTruck program in Africa. It's a way for students to learn how to code, especially in remote areas where there's no electricity. So we'll help bring in electricity And through this truck, it's not virtual, they go in, they sit in this, it's like a van, and they learn how to code. And I love this project, and I'd like to see more of these projects come about. So this is my team. And I'll just end this slide. And the last things I'll pull up while we're having discussion is this book that I wrote in the 1980s. I'm going to enlarge it for you here. It's called Recreate the Third Millennial Culture. And I'll send each of you a copy of this. It's as a PDF. It talks about how transhumanism started. You can just see through here. Here's the poem I wrote in one of my performances. I wasn't on the moon, I was inside the volcano, which looked like the moon. And then it was made into a short film. Then I go over some of the issues with arts and sciences and DNA and culture in the making and where we are today. You'll see the timeline of technology and human enhancement virtuality. This is a film I made inside the Red Rocks Amphitheater. As you can see, I sculpted my body into the Red Rocks. And we made a film of my body breaking away from the amphitheater's rocks, like a mountain, as the sun rose over the top of the rocks. And that was made into a short film and whatnot. So I want to close and leave enough time because we're closing in now. So I will send that to anyone who wants it. And I'll stop screen sharing now. Thank you.
Thank you so much for the talk. It's been a great path. There's a few things that I wanted to say, specifically relating to the frame, or you said the box of the human. Like when you're researching early transhumanist theories, you wanted to break through the box of all that entails what it is to be human, or that's how I heard it. And then I started thinking of what is the state of identity in between the phases while you're switching bodies. And it made me think, like, why must the brain be bodied? Like, why must cognition have a body? And can it not be disembodied, agency? But that's only part of it. Like the idea of like transferring between skulls or transferring between bodies makes me think of like the role of error or stochasticness, like with data corruption. And so like there's always a risk of like, how does my identity retain its self in transmission from one state of being embodied to another? Like if I want to become a basketball or something, like if I want to just be a bouncing ball for the rest of my thing. There's sort of like also in your piece of the epic on the meta with the avatars, I did think like there's this sort of like atavistic ethics and responsibility of like, how do I coordinate my avatar or puppet in the metaverse type of things. And so these are some points relating to like the framing of the human as a box, and like maybe what are your thoughts on like why might that be that we tend to, like a hermit crab puts a shell onto itself, like it needs a home or something. Like why do we kind of like are inclined to make our bodies full again? So, sort of like you were saying, like with the like if we lose a limb, like we want the appendage of the full form or the gestalt of that. I don't just.
I think that okay, I'm going to answer it 3 points. The last issue about why would we want a prosthetic arm and leg to look like a leg and an arm? Well, for functionality. I mean, if you lost your arm, you could have it designed any way you want, but if you want to use that arm to be ambidextrous, you don't need it. But if you want to use the arm to be plural in your abilities, you need an arm that can grasp and hold and whatnot. So I think we ought to respect the people who have prosthetic limbs to know that they need that limb to walk or run or pick up or make love or whatever they want to do. So that's in the material physical world. And certainly those limbs can look as different as you want to do whatever you want with them. But most people just want to, live a happy life and get a job and work and have a family and be healthy. And, life is short. For avatars can look like anything, so that doesn't matter. You can be a basketball if you want as an avatar, but the issue of identity is the core thing here. And the continuity of identity is located largely in memories. And so in our brain, that's through neurotransmitters and the electrical charges. And if that can be copied into code, that would be uploaded, so it's code. So you say, well, why do we need to have a form or a body? Well, I think we need to not use the term body. I think the body gets a lot of problems. It's a vehicle, it's an envelope, it's a system. You can't just exist without some kind of system. You have to be in something or somewhere. You say, well, what if I'm ubiquitous? I can be in many different places. Yes, you could be in many different places. Nevertheless, you still need to be encapsulated in some form. You go, what if I'm just code and I want to travel across the internet and go all these places in different forms and games and whatnot? Your code still has the carrot, right? A code, if you look at code, it is in a form. Well, it's like mathematics. The mathematics, if you write out mathematics, it's still done like a code, and it is still encapsulated within its numerical synthesis. So I think the word body's gotten a bad rap. So let's just forget the term body. It's your existence, your system. And I started using the term system more now because of that body's gotten a bad rap. And I don't like it either. I think I'd rather I'm a system in this material physical world with this envelope that is aging. And I love working out. I'm an athlete, so I love doing things. But when I'm doing a sport, I go into the Zen space and I become the sport. So I'm not thinking about my body, I'm thinking about the energy in breathing, like with Pilates or lifting weights or skiing or something. I'm outside my body in my experience. But the main thing that I think of what you're saying is a lot of criticism of transhumanism early on by postmodernist rhetoric was that they'll just be headless, bodiless beings. Well, now you're saying that's okay to be a headless, bodiless being, right? So it's interesting to me that instead of going, oh, we're just going to be bodiless and heads uploaded or in a jar, and that's a horrible, horrible thing. We're going, well, why do we need these bodies? We need a body in this world, in this era, because that's who we are. We're alive. Everyone here has a body. I'm looking at, each one of you. I see a body or a name. We have names, so we have identities and we have bodies, and that's how we communicate today. How we communicate in the post-humanist world could be very, very different. We do not know what that could become.
Yes, thank you. That the other elephant in the room, what I was going to say is mathematics and computation, and this kind of transmission of information through it needs the language or the grammar of syntax of something. There has to be a respond, call and respond. If it's just all response, static or there's no feedback if it's just one side. Without feedback. I think okay. I see some other questions. Mafia.
Oh, hi.
Yes. Hi, Natasha.
Hey.
Thank you so much for the presentation. It's really inspiring, and your work is very important to me. So I have a question about fear. I'm working with emotions, and I wonder if you have some, and I imagine you have, some reflection on why transhumanism is connected or in some way communicated along with fear. And I am really interested about if it's a problem of of the unknown, probably, like how we confront the unknown is about, as you said before, an effectism, about sensationalism, you know? So I wonder about what are the reflections, the core reflections regarding fear and this whole narrative about evil, fear, etc. Within transhumanism.
Okay. In transhumanism, the concept of fear is kind of like a non sequitur. Fear is something that is an emotion that is triggered by the unknown, as you said. Change, a memory, a bad memory, like PTSD. But it's largely an unknown or memory or something that is repulsive to us, like scorpions are repulsive to me. I'm very afraid of them. And I live in a scorpion area. So I'm in the desert, so I'm very afraid of scorpions. I have PTSD from an automobile. I went through head first through a windshield in a car accident. And so in a car, I'm a terrible passenger. So you don't want to drive with me. I'm a good driver, but a terrible passenger. But so in transhumanism, fear is a reaction to something. And so fear it can be good in doses. It can be warning signs, just like don't put your hand in the flame or the fire. You pull your hand back. In transhumanism, the issue, rather than fear, is over emotions that are human emotions are largely innate and perpetuated by our brainstem or our reptilian brain back here, the fight or flight. You're going to fight, argue, and have a war or kill, or if you're going to fly, you're going to run away to protect yourself or because you're scared. Those are from our early savannah days when we were, early hominids. With our basic tools, we fought or we ran away. Those instincts are still ingrained in our DNA, in our code. So we learn through experience and maturation to not get into fights with people. If someone says something nasty to us, we just say, don't say that, please, or I'm not going to argue with you, and leave calmly. Or we learn how to debate, and we develop debate skills or clever argumentation. When someone's trying to manipulate us through Machiavellian tendencies, we get away from the person because the person's not a good person. It's kind of ugh. So the transhumanist perspective is not focused on evil or fear. It focuses on human psychology and what causes us to not want to change, or what causes us to be afraid of the unknown. Most transhumanists are not afraid of the unknown. In fact, they embrace it. They want to create the world of tomorrow. They want to be at the cutting edge of how change happens and where we're headed. And that's what I love about transhumanism. It's a very proactive philosophy and practice where people really want to help create, invent, innovate the ideas, the structures, the architecture, the design, the stories of where we're going as humans, that downplays dystopian negativity. No one wants to go to someone's house if they're going to start yelling at you. No one wants friends who are going to constantly criticize them. So, it's transhumanism is pretty practical. You surround yourself with good people who make you feel good about yourself. Eat healthy, exercise, do work that is your true self. Don't mimic or copy or parrot someone else just because they're famous or you think they're important. Find your own sense of self and then do it. So did I answer your question, Mafi?
Yes, I mean, yes, it's like it's part of our language and as a reactive language from the body, but also in our narratives. And I just probably wonder why it's sometimes associated with these emotions but I think you answer my
Emotions are great, but over emotions cause the fear and the anger and the wars and the hate and the discrimination and prejudice. I don't know any transhumanist who is prejudiced or hate. I mean, I know some not nice transhumanists, to be sure. Not all of us are nice, and some of us can be asses or jerks or something, but I think most transhumanists are kind, generous, sharing people. There are Christian transhumanists, there are atheist transhumanists, there are spiritual transhumanists, there's Buddhist transhumanists, and not every Buddhist transhumanist is a good person just because they're a Buddhist or etc. And there are scientists who are transhumanists and bioethicists who are transhumanists, and some of the bioethicists who are transhumanists who say, I'm a transhumanist, and I don't agree with their bioethics. I don't agree with, they want to put a rule on someone else. I'm going, no, who are you? So that type of ego always keeps on coming back to get control or to try to, politics is the worst in transhumanism. It's always been really, really tough. I got in the 1990s, it was just really uncomfortable between the socialists and the libertarians. And I was neither a socialist or libertarian. I've always been, pro-democracy and vote on ideas rather than people. So I hated that. It was horrible, but it was disruptive. And, we had to put a stop to it, and it did stop. But politics takes over. And when people get into their polarized views, it's everywhere. It's in every group. So it's pretty awful.
Very interesting. That is exactly what I was looking for. So it's an ethical and political problem. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the ego gets in. It's like I was looking up yesterday. I was writing something. I was looking up ego. What really is ego? And if you Google ego, I know what ego is, but I really wanted to see what the definition was. It's not very good. Ego takes over when you lose any sense of community or communication. It's all about you, and it's that you're the most important thing in the world, and it's narcissistic. And ego is good to have some self-worth and self-understanding, but when your ego goes in and starts taking over, and I've seen it do just awful things to people. Yeah. I was looking at Lara's comment.
I see that Renzo has his hand up. If Renzo wants to go, and then we'll go through.
Yes, please.
Thank you, Moises. Thank you very much, Natasha, again, for your exposition. I'm not very clear about the point of transhumanism, because I come back to our discussion the last weekend, when we talk about the augmentation, that you say, yes, of course, it's go beyond the humans, in the sense of the tools again. But there is a philosophical position, I understand you now, that there is something important in that sense of body and being with, this kind of design. But how do you see in this aspect the internal, or taking this notion, Aristotelical notion of noetic aspects in the transhumanism, this aspect that is in the interior with the exterior? Because for me, go beyond. I want to take a personal example, because in the kind of the arts, because we are artists, most of here people. Because, for example, my grandmother, for example, she doesn't read, she don't writing, but she's a good artist because she working a very beautiful knitings with her hands. She working a wool and make a very beautiful stuff with that. For me, she go beyond of this aspect of internal and external with these tools and with the technical, with the praxis and with the poiesis, if we want to take in this and in these arts. Not taking the notion of arts as technique. We have having this knowledge about informational aspects or philosophy, etc., with discussion here. So how do you see this aspect, of course, in this point with transhumanism? How can dialogue both? How can be dialogue nowadays? Of course, nowadays in this technological living that constitute us nowadays. So how you can take in account this two dialogues, this kind of art, this handicraft and this part of this connection with this noetic sense and the externalization of augmenting, because as I saw in your presentation, you always taking the notion of augmenting something, grow up, but how do you see grow up, going more in the level of down level for this understand this trans? This is my concern.
No, do you think that, okay, you mentioned up and down.
Exactly, up and down.
Okay,
yeah.
well, I don't want to go into, up and down is binary. There's places in between. It doesn't always have to be up, it can be exponential. And this talk is about exponential, which is ubiquitous. Go up, which is exponential, as you know. But what I clarified early on is that art can be anything. It's the mode of taking yourself and putting it in whatever modality, whatever instrument, whatever technology, whatever tool, whatever impression, whatever expression, whatever experience can be your art. It can be a practice or a theory. It can be whatever you as an artist want it to be. That's your choice as an artist. When you mentioned your grandmother, I thought what she was doing was very keenly intelligent. I don't see it otherwise. Using your hands to create, whether it's sewing or weaving or knitting or crocheting, is a very cognitive focused process. And I used to knit, so I know. And it's, you got to know when to do their loops and when to use your needles and when to, find your pattern. And reading patterns in knitting can be very difficult. They're mathematical. You've got to go so many rows over, and then you do the certain framework with your needles. Same with crocheting, is you use one needle and you're using your finger and it's very difficult. It's like playing a game, with you. You've got your hand-mind interaction. I don't see anything down about doing crafts, even if it's molding clay or sculpting. I mean, I think that it's the mind to the hand, that connectivity in creativity, in creating, building, is a skill that is rewarding, not only for the product that's going to come out of it, but also for the plasticity of the brain, keeping it functioning, it's a beautiful process. So when I think that I like the way you nailed it, that it's not always about, it's improving or but there is, and I have to say, this is where there can be a quandary. You don't want to live as a human with whatever technology or science that is afforded or brought about and become dumbed down. I don't want to lose all the learning that I've acquired over the years, or the experience or the wisdom or knowledge, or just, let's say, experience. I don't want to lose that. And when people grow old and get dementia or Alzheimer's or any type of neurological slowing down, they lose so much of their history. And some can be satisfied, if, like my mother had dementia and she became mentally ill because she lost her brain. She in her 100th year, and she didn't recognize me, and she had no idea who she was. But I'm not. That's not what I want, frankly. I I don't have to be the most intelligent person in the world, but I certainly would rather keep on becoming more creative and informed and experienced than become less experienced, less informed, less capable. So maybe the correct word is not up or down, but it's more expansive, perhaps, more aware. I think awareness is probably pretty close, or yeah, maybe instead of up, more aware, because aware, it seems to go in all directions, right? Where up is only in a linear vertical climb. So instead of have these silos of qualities, maybe they ought not to be silos, but maybe they're more circular or fluid or interchangeable. Does that make sense?
Yes, exactly. Yeah. My point was more in the aspect of the intuitive connections too, because intuition is something very important. In that, when I saw my grandmother, as I told you, I saw intuitions in that patterns, you know, and this intuition is a little that Moises said is embodied with this informational aspect of these recursivities, you know, because the point here is the recursivity. I think the intuition is something that go beyond, you know, in this thinking of transhumanism or humans in self too. I don't know, but this is what my point. And thank you very much too for the example of your own experience with your mother too.
Thank you.
I appreciate it. Thank you, Natasha.
Thank you.
Jay White has his hand raised.
Okay.
Sorry, also for earlier, Natasha, I didn't want to interrupt your as you were speaking. I've got maybe quite a big question, but I thought I'd give the opportunity to ask it anyway because you're here, so that's the opportunity to learn. So I've been researching, kind of. Maybe it's difficult to define what transhumanism is because there are so many of them, right? So many different varieties.
No, it's not. No, you've been misinformed. Okay, there's one transhumanism, one philosophy. That's it.
So from your and your husband's transhumanist reader, which I just finished recently, Sorga's book, Posthuman, for example, which is wonderfully laid out in that transhumanist reader. There, for example, your husband does talk about how one of the problems is that there have been different strains of transhumanism. So it has been difficult to produce, if you will, what might be a manifesto. So often in movements similar to artist movements, like a manifesto is consistently reformed, like the first, second Surrealist manifesto, because of the fact that it's so difficult to pin down. So I've been trying to understand, because with the kind of the different examples that you gave of kind of transhumanist artists, there was often kind of caveat that they're artists that are transhumanists. So the question is, and this is right kind of what maybe your talk is the fact that, can we recognize what something is as transhumanist only because it's using kind of different types of technology? And I think that would be an incorrect definition of what transhumanism is.
Absolutely. No, it has nothing to do. I mean, technology is a tool. Transhumanism is about existence and a way of viewing the world as a philosophy.
So the way that I mean, this maybe you can just say yes or no to me because this is I'm asking maybe from the horse's mouth, so to speak. So often there is this distinction that is made between health and augmentation, right? And what it seems like is that transhumanism tries to deny, and I'm neither here nor I'm trying to understand, deny that there is a distinction between health and augmentation, or that what has often been a kind of full health, right, has augmented. So we can't see, for example, we produce glasses which then help us see, but that then in a certain sense can augment the way that we also see, right? So that distinction between kind of the medical humanities or the criticism of medicine and the criticism of technology kind of blur there, right? But the way that I'm trying to understand is what there would be distinguishing factor of transhumanism would be maybe then the kind of practical side of it, because you can have a philosophy which isn't transhumanism that says, yes, we need medicines, or we need to, that help with, lots and lots of ideologies have that.
Absolutely.
Right. So I think for me, what seems the distinguishing factor is the distinction between kind of the should and the could. So we have these technologies, right? So I'm trying to understand which one comes first. So we have technologies which can augment, cognition, emotion, aesthetic appreciation, etc. And because we have those technologies, we should adopt those technologies in order to transition to whatever you want to call the post-human or whatever. Now, which one comes first? Is it the fact that we have these technologies, therefore we should augment, or we decide that we should augment the human and therefore we produce the technologies? What I'm trying to understand is which way
what is it? Which came first, the egg or the chicken?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, because for me,
no, I understand what you're saying, and I can't do a yes, no on this. I'm sorry. It's all about evolution. Humans didn't define evolution. Humans didn't create evolution. Evolution happens. It's part of life. It's part of the ecology. It's part of the environment. We didn't sit down and go, oh, how are we going to be human? Okay, and then we need these set of rules and guidelines. Humans evolved from the hominid. Many of us have Neanderthal genes. Many of us are modern humans. Chugwu, he was just here a moment ago, there he is, Chugwu is in Africa. He's part of the original humans that came out of Africa. Then we spread across and our color changed and we evolved with, stood up and learned how to do things and build tools, and we learned language and we learned communication and we learned symbols and storytelling, and then the higher arts like mathematics, et cetera, and philosophy developed from that. So it's not a matter of which came first, it's all about evolution and human needs. So when you get to why did humans evolve? Because they needed to survive, because they had probably had babies and they wanted to protect their babies, their family. Why did humans and dogs, evolve together? Because of wolf pack. We needed the wolves to yelp when danger was arriving, and then wolves needed us to help feed them, right? So you have this symbiotic relationship with the early hominids and wolves, and today we have humans and dogs or cats or whatever. But so it's like, where does it begin? And you can't find the exact point of beginning because it's evolution. That's why I mentioned Dr. Lynn Margulies and how life began in a cesspool of chemicals. And then you had neurons, eventually when, there was a chemical reaction between the proton and neutron and electrons and, all this stuff. But to answer your question specifically, no one should or ought to. It's up to the person. And I'm very profound about that. And so is transhumanism. Transhumanism has no shoulds. Transhumanism has no oughts. Let's keep that out of it. If you want to die and not upload and not enhance, that's your choice. I have family members who, accept death and they don't, want to live longer and don't want to augment. That's their choice. I love them dearly. I have friends as well, very close friends who are not transhumanists. I don't care. I love them for who they are because they're humane people. So the bottom line is humaneness. So why would we want to augment or enhance? It's not just for health. It is for health and consciousness, awareness. It's not just about the body and living longer, it's about the mind. It's about who we are. Are we kind people? Are we empathic? Are we generous? Do we share knowledge? Do we want to be around healthy thinking people? Or do we want to be a part of people who burn buildings and use machetes and shotguns and kill and destroy? I want to be around good people. Not that there's good or bad, okay, that's binary too. I want to be around positive, healthy, creative people who enjoy life and want to live. And I think that's identifies most transhumanists love life. We want to live longer because we love life, not because we want to take over the world. It has nothing to do with that at all. Transhumanists see, and this is the bottom line, understand evolution, evolutionary biology. The human being as an animal has a shelf life. We start aging after our periods or puberty. We have sex, we reproduce. Then we start aging, we go through menopause for women, andropause for men. Our brain starts slowing down, we get osteoporosis, we arthritis, we become a little balanced and we forget, we start aging. Aging takes over. Most of us, I would say all transhumanists, do not want to age. Bottom line, we don't want to be 20. We don't want to be that year. The year doesn't matter. It's the aging process that causes dementia, that causes a slowing down, falling down, brittle bones, loss of balance, unhappiness, depression. All these different things are part of aging, and it's part of being human. Everyone, every human who lives longer, lives past, let's say 70, maybe even 60. Oh, no, 50 is when it starts going. You are aging and your body is breaking down. Apoptosis happens, cells die, the body starts degrading, your hair goes gray or white. This is my natural color, it's gray, white, or platinum. That's this is natural color. My skin, I've lost pigmentation. I have arthritis in my hands. I can't ski the moguls like I used to. You slow down. My mind is still pretty good, but what happens? Look what my mother, look at your parents, look at your grandparents. How many of you can say that you look forward to the day when you're going to change the diapers of your mother and father? I've done it. I loved my mother. I changed her diapers. I have no problem doing that. She changed my diapers, but I would prefer to live longer and healthier, and that's transhumanism. The main problem, the core of transhumanism is the transhumanist system says no shoulds, no ought to. It's just looking at evolution and going, why were humans engineered by biology to only live a certain lifespan? Why do some animals live to 200 and humans live to healthy, to 60 or 70? Why do some trees live to hundreds and hundreds of years? And it's easy at your age because all of you are young here. So you can go, well, who cares when I'm in my 70s or 80s? That's a long way off. But when you're in your 70s, you go, wait a minute, I'm enjoying life. I'm still creating art or writing or creating ideas, loving my dogs or cats or sports. I'm not ready to go yet. And there is no person that is healthy in their mind who doesn't suffer from depression or something, a painful disease that says, okay, I'm ready to die. I want to die. Let's go die. I mean, so it's all about death. And death has had a stranglehold on humans. It's like an albatross. We're waiting for what is the image of the man with the sickle coming to get us. I just watched a movie the other day about death. It's a beautiful story in Germany during World War II. And it's through the eyes of death, and death is telling the story. It's a beautiful German film. I can't remember the name of it right offhand, but it's death doesn't care who you are, where you are. People die. Have you ever been happy when someone you love dies? Did you go, yay, they're dead? No, most of us cry. Most of us feel loss. Most of us feel sadness that someone we loved or knew died. The 2-year-old boy walking around covered in blood looking for his parents on the 4th of July. I'm sure he wasn't happy that his parents died. And his father died protecting him, covering him. And his father didn't want his son to die. So we don't go, yay, death, yay. And the great poet, who was it that said, death, get away from me? I mean, there's so many beautiful poems about, soliloquies about death. So bottom line, I'm not afraid of death. I've almost died a couple of times. So it's not that bad when you're struggling to live. You really don't feel much if, you've got to that point where you're semi-conscious. But it's the point that there's a love of life, and that's part of transhumans. And whether or not you're a transhuman, people are living longer. They're living into their 90s with, with their scruples intact. And there, there's different medications for arthritis, and there's different medications for osteoporosis and dementia. We're learning more and more about Alzheimer's and early onset Alzheimer's and dementia. And it's a big disease. I gave a talk about it just a couple of days ago. There's, I think it's, gosh, I wish I could pull up that. It was at a life extension conference. There's millions, I think it's something like 40 million people every day suffer from dementia around the world. And it's, so let's just say there's millions and millions of people alive who have dementia, and they're being taken care of by their family members, of course. And it's, if you've ever had dementia, which none of us, I hope, have now, dude, it's pretty awful, pretty awful. So to live longer, it's not just about overcoming death. It's living longer and healthier. And again, there are no shoulds and oughts, and anyone can die anytime they want. And transhumanism has nothing against it. It just thinks that the human lifespan is a bit too short. And most of the years that we do gain a sense of self-esteem and confidence and any level of insight or mindfulness is usually after we've been through a lot of crap. And we go, shit, I'm not going to do that again. Or you learn through hardships how to behave a little bit better. And then all of a sudden, you're old, and then you die. So I think that wisdom certainly deserves a little bit more of a lifespan.
The theme of extension or expansion, we're not close to closing out, but we have like maybe 3 more comments, and we could hear them out. And I'm not sure if Adrienne Rose wanted to ask her questions, and then we'll go to Antoine and Mafe and Renzo if we.
Thank you. Hi there.
Hi.
I just wanted to go back and touch a little bit and ask 2 quick questions, if that's okay. One was about if there are any artists or artworks existing that you would say are close or possible to a post-human world that you would hope for. That's one question. And the other is, do you believe love will exist in a post-human world, and what do you think that might look like?
Yeah, okay, for the first one, Ian, I don't know if you saw the slide where I showed some other artists. I showed 2 architects who designed future structures. And I think the future worlds will be organic like that in the biosphere, within this material physical world. They're very beautiful depictions of a post-human future. And I think that virtual worlds like Second Life, the Terrasum, which I mentioned with Martine Rothblatt, she designed a virtual world that we used to have a lot of transhumanist meetings in 20 years ago. And very beautiful, very beautiful. So the architecture, I think, is really exciting for the future. And communication, how we, transport telepresence and all of that. So I would mention Martine Rothblatt and Alif Ayater for future beings existing in cyberspace as post-humans. I think that I also showed Stephen Valentine's work, where he has an architectural structure that's called Time Shift. It's really beautiful. So the artist that I mentioned, I can send it to you. If you email me, I'll just send you that slide deck.
Okay.
And how I envision it, I think that it will be extremely diverse and complex. I think that we will have friends and associates in different environments, like really in real time out space, like on Mars or the moon, or near Earth habitats. I think that we'll be able to, we'll redefine death. We can live as long as we want. We can go on vacation and stop existence for a while, then come back if we back up our minds. And ties into continuity. I think it was Moises, I can't remember who asked, I can't remember who asked about that continuity gap. If you can freeze or still something in there, and that continuity gap could be backed up, so the continuity could continue. But I think that people will be living all sorts of ages and different looks, and exploring different environments, very much like we do today, but with different tools and a different awareness. And my personal hope for a post-human world, a post-human future, is a more humane post-humanity. I'm really stuck on that because I'm really sick and tired of all the wokeness and the meanness and the social media platforms and the polarized politics and all that. It's just, you know, aren't you just fed up with it? You know, it's just, it's true brain drain. Yeah, I think that we'll become more enlightened. I think that we're really in bad shape right now with all this crap. But thank you. But so please email me and I'll send you images.
Thank you. And then the one on love.
Oh, I miss love. What's love?
Do you believe love will exist in a post-human world?
Oh, yes. Oh, yes.
Like?
Oh gosh, I think it's one of the greatest emotions and chemical reactions in the universe. I think it's physics. I think it's, you know, this chemical, incredible electrical charge, and it just, oh, I mean, so many species love. Look at elephants protect their young and have their burials. You know, it's just, love is just incredible. Yes, definitely, definitely.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
So, coming from Antoine.
Hi.
Hi.
Hello. It was a wonderful presentation. I hope my question doesn't strike with maybe too rude, but
okay.
no.
I think Jay White already set me up. No,
Yeah.
Jay, I'm just teasing. No, I love you. I'm just teasing. No, I think.
Because you said you manifested a lot of repulse from other ideologies, maybe that, and so my question is about the ethos of transhumanism, and how would you could you define it to maybe take it? Sorry, would you try to just express how it can survive attack in a geopolitical space where other ideologies are combative and try to exactly have more attention and take center stage? So I heard a lot, I listened to the whole wonderful presentation, but it struck me that the mythos of transhumanism was a bit, it ended before the dream beyond achievement.
Okay, no, I understand what you're saying.
Yeah,
the,
you see?
the ethos is, yeah, the ethos, however you want to say it, is a respect for intelligence, critical thinking, and visionary thinking. And I think that is like the fuel that drives the beliefs and the culture. Don't pull one over on me type thing. Don't market or advertise yourself as something that you're not. The genuineness of a person or their project is core to transhumanism. When someone does bullshit, they're usually nabbed for it. They're usually caught and talked to. And how to deal with the naysayers and a lot of the problems. Well, we've certainly grown up and matured. I remember in the 1990s, it was pretty awful. And we learned how to not get not so upset about it when someone's making up stories about you or misinterpreting your aims. Like in academics, I know there's a book, Transhumanism and its Critics. A lot of the philosophers, I debated in that and brought in a team of scholars to work with me to respond to their defamation of our ideas. And we did it. We handled it very straight on, very clear, very professional. So we've had to debate the theoreticians, the philosophers, the journalists, the ethicists who exaggerate or misconstrue, and but we've learned to do it in a more reasoned way. I think that that's pretty important to, when someone says something that's not true, stop it in the moment and then ask them to proceed. But if you don't stop it in the moment, they'll go on and on and on. And so it has to be clarified early on that and distinguish. One person who was in that book that debated transhumanism and said it was a stupid idea, that people just wanted to live forever and wanted to rule the world, and we want to just be upload as machines. He has invited me to now work with a project at his university. So it's, if you stay reasoned and just keep on going forward, the people who dissed you or misunderstood will eventually come about. But if I think that's really important, to just stay the course.
Thank you.
Then we have 2 more comments, and then we'll probably close out because we've been on for a while. But
Yeah, sure.
It's Mehra. Yeah. Hi again.
Hi. Oh, there you are. Yes. Okay.
Yeah.
Hi.
So I'm again into politics and ethics. In terms of rights, and I just don't know which author to look at. So that is why my question is up. So what you were explaining before about the whole core of transhumanism drove me to this question. The right to live longer as the right to choose when and how to die is part of this problem of extending life, right? And the other thing is like, if we are talking about extending, for instance, our mind into technology devices, whatever, who might have the right over our extended mind? Organizations, our families, our governments. Like, these are 2 questions that are very, very important for me. And is as also you mentioned, is of course we try to find answers into previous philosophers and philosophy history, but I will like to know who is working on these, who are like the prominent minds working in these 2 specific areas or problems right now, please. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. There have been transhumanists working on this for decades with encryption and cryptocurrency and blockchain. Ralph Merkel, Eric Drexler, Nell Watson, Ben Goertzel. So this is nothing new to us. We knew this was going to happen because, again, we have foresight. We've been studying the future for decades. So encryption and cryptocurrency encryption has been part of the transhumanist philosophy worldview for a long time, since the 1980s. Okay, so working on it right now, I would say Nell Watson, Peter Voss, Ben Goertzel, singularity.net. Andrew Sandberg, he's at the Future of Humanity Institute. There's so many, those are just transhumanists. I don't know people outside the transhumanist community who are working on it because it's been such a transhumanist thing for a long time. And the issue of who owns our upload or our personhood, all that, there's a whole world evolving outside of the mainstream, and that world is with decentralized autonomous organizations. And it's a cryptocurrency world, it's a virtual world, and a lot of people that are involved in these DAOs, D-A-O. I'll put it here in case no one knows, D-A-O, it's called decentralized, autonomous. That have their own governance, they have their own money, they have their own communities, and there's people, many people, thousands upon thousands of people that communicate in these worlds with cryptocurrency and Bitcoins and all of that. And they have their own governance. Every DAO, every organization must have its governance, and they have smart contracts. and they have tokens, and it's again a whole world. I don't want to spend time on that, but it seems to me that blockchain is probably the direction we're going. And it's interesting because while we want to get out of this, box of normalcy, we're creating boxes of blockchain. That's why I had the boxes for science, technology, philosophy, and design, because the blockchain makes sense because it's encrypted. So the whole world of encryption and security are going to become very big fields. An artist who's a transhumanist artist who's been working with surveillance for a long time is Steve Mann. He's the one that wears a video on his head. He videotapes everything. In fact, when he was in Paris about 20 years ago, he was beat up in a McDonald's in Paris because he was videotaping everything, and people going, don't videotape. So he and I were in New York at a Do Ex Machina conference. It was from the film, and they were turning it into a video game, and they invited Steve and me to talk about the future, a transhuman future. And Steve and I went around New York City looking at all the surveillance everywhere. And we were just at Times Square and Union Square, looking at everywhere there was surveillance. So surveillance is a big thing. So he came up with a theory called susveillance. So you surveil those surveilling you. But there's going to be far more work in the field of cybersecurity. And my suggestion is to look up Black Hat and the Black Hat conferences, because the Black Hat conferences are great. They bring in some of the greatest hacking minds in the world to give talks, and they're hacking you as they're giving a talk, which is fascinating. So those conferences are really cool. I taught computer science students for years that were in cybersecurity, and I actually was the chair of one competition between the Black Hat and the White Hat. So they had to find the hackers, and it was really exciting. So it's a big area, but I would say there's a whole world of people outside this mainstream that we communicate in that are working behind the scenes on blockchain architecture and protecting identity, because there's going to be a lot of hacking. It's going to, it's a little bit scary. It's almost like Black Mirror, that TV series about that. I want to make a comment to, I think it's Jay White, you asked about, you said movements have to keep on evolving and changing. There is a Transhumanist Manifesto that was written in 1983, and that has evolved and changed and updated over the years. It was revised in 1998, I believe, written in 1983, revised in 1997 or 98, revised in 2003, and again revised in 2021. And it is the Transhuman Manifesto. There's only one manifesto, and I authored that, and I've updated it to stay in sync with the changes and how I'm changing and the world is changing for transhumanism. Transhumanism is not a dogmatic philosophy. One of its principles or tenets or core beliefs is that we have to continue changing and adapting and evolving as things adapt and evolve around us, so that so it's not rigid, it's not dogmatic. I think that's kind of important with that.
I guess we'll end up, I do like that concept of surveillance, because that's like the below to the above, like the two cameras watching each other. And because like Renzo was talking about up and down, I guess we'll have the final question and remark, because we're out. Well, yes. I don't know how spit out everyone is, but it's been a great. So yeah, we'll just have this last comment, and then we will look forward to the next workshop.
Can I? Thank you, Moises. This is the last time. I want to be briefly. Thank you again, Natasha. Yes, my question was related that you said about the extension of life. Thinking in the question of Joel too, about entropic in the planetary condition nowadays, because how to think in extending life with the technology if the planetary condition cannot allow us to extending more the life, because it's not planet is not maintaining too many humans in the conditions that they are in nowadays. It's the reality now. Thinking this in total system, in all the ecosystems. How do you see that in your exposition that you say when you say I want to extending my life more healthy than my mother and nowadays? How you can see with this retribution of feedback in the planetary conditions? You made me. I was thinking about that when I listened to you. But
all right, so I'll give a couple of straightforward answers. First off, you can't exist and be healthy if your environment's not healthy. Period. The end. If the Earth is not healthy, you're going to die of some disease. I got cancer, bladder cancer, from the environment. So I'm very clear about this. I was working as an artist with inks and tools and textiles in my printing lab. I got cancer 20 years later, bladder cancer, right before it metastasized. So that's very aware of the environment. And I've always, as I told you, performance artists in the environment. So bottom line is you cannot live longer and healthy if your environment is not healthy. Okay, so the Earth matters, space matters, our solar system matters, our universe matters. Okay, how to do that? So far, we haven't been doing a very good job at cleaning up the environment. There's still oil spills and pollution and industrial revolution left a lot of issues from the steam engine, et cetera. But with the advance in nanorobotics, swarms can go in and clean up the oil spills. So it's just that technology is needed for that. The hole in the Earth's ozone has grown smaller, not larger. That's a good thing. There is still pollution, but there's laws that create that say your car has to be inspected every year, every so many years in different areas of the world to make sure that the exhaust doesn't contain harmful stuff in it. And so there's great changes that are happening. Nuclear energy is looking at being one of the cleanest energies. It's going through a rehab right now, where it was a bad thing. It's starting to change. So we want the planet to be as healthy as possible, period. Okay, now the second issue about too many humans. Well, that's a fallacy. The statistics from Hans Rosling and the experts, I'm not a statistician, so I'm not an expert in this area at all, but I studied the primary sources. I've repeated this numerous times today, that go to the primary sources and get your information. Primary sources in statistics, people who really study this say that the population is probably going to be an issue on the decline, not on the overpopulation. We have evidence and facts that population is declining in certain areas of the world. Japan is the first country to come out and say, we don't have a high birth rate. In fact, it is a fact that the birth rate in the world has declined, not increased. That doesn't mean population is still not increasing in certain areas like the United States, et cetera. But the birth rate generally around the world, the number of people having children is lessened. You used to have 5 to 10 children. Now you maybe have none or 1 or 2. So we may need to increase reproduction. And to add to that, lots of people want to live in near Earth habitat or in different environments like space, the moon, Mars, and it's going to be built out in the coming decades or century, and so a lot of people want to leave Earth and keep Earth as a garden and go and live in other areas and come back to Earth. So you have to think like a futurist. You have to think about all different areas. So life extension isn't going to damage the planet in ways that maybe have been professed in the past in criticism of transhumanism, because we thought there was overpopulation. Now we're realizing that there is population decline in some country and a definite decrease in the number of births. And also that the new technologies like nano robots and swarms cleaning up the environment and cleaner energy will help protect the planet. And along with that, people do want to go out into space. And there's another industry of space exploration and space tourism. So, yeah.
Yeah, I understand you. I understand your point, Natasha. I think it's for a more long conversation, because I agree with you that it's not the problem how many people, it's how they live in and how the system for how you consume with the system.
Yeah, I agree with you. The consumption is disgusting. Yeah.
If people know how to consume in the planetary aspect, in the systemic aspect, it's another condition, of course. But
yes, and that's why we need a more humane humanity.
Of course. Yeah, thank you very much, Natasha.
And the people who are going to these summits, these green energy summits or planet summits from all over the world, they're flying their private jets there. The hypocrisy is so great. And we all want, again, to live in a healthy environment, to be loved and love, and to do our work and create and go to sleep peacefully at night. And it's hard to do that when you know that people are suffering in different areas because they don't have food, or another country's invading them, or women are having their genitalia cut off, and it's just or stoned because they've been raped. I mean, the horrors are many. They're not a few. They're many, and there has to be a paradigmatic shift of great magnitude across the planet. It means our species has to wake up. And it's not just us transhumanists, it's everyone. You don't have to be a transhumanism, but everyone. Most of us in this conversation here are already aware of this, but think of all the people, the millions of people that aren't here, that still live in an old world mentality of fight or flight, or kill or be killed. Or steal, stealing's okay, or it's just even I mentioned Foucault early on. He didn't like women. So many women mention Foucault in their writings. Every time I come across it, I hiccup. What? But it's not just putting that there. It's just everywhere. And as a species, we got to grow up and become a little bit nicer and wiser and set an example, even on the small scale. I mean, what can we do with Putin and Ukraine? I mean, what can we do? Send food, send clothing, send diapers, stand up and march in the streets. And what can we do about the genocide that happens? And it's just not what Hitler did. It's still going on. Genocide is happening in various areas of the world. So it's a big issue.
I did see an overtime question from Jay White, but that also triggered a question I had regarding the cryogenics. There's also like the ethical, ecological implications of cryogenics, such as the sustained living life. But his other part of the question that I saw is entropic, and it makes me think of like Vanilla Sky and like the corruption of data, or like like what could happen. But if Jay wants to add to the question that I started.
To the question. I thought you responded to the ecological question very well, Natasha. So, but fundamentally, the problem is the fact that like evolution is determined also by death. So there is kind of an entropic condition also to evolution, which would seem as though the transhuman doesn't take into consideration. So, for example, if you look at one of the main principles of evolution from Boltzmann through to Locke to Odum, is entropy, in the sense that it's a struggle for entropy, but it's also the fact that the survival of the fittest also assumes that there is a kind of niche to grow into, which also assumes that there's the death of a subsequent. That's why Lynn Margulis and other people, suggest that there's 99% of all species that have ever lived on Earth have died, right? And that death is conditional for evolutionary change. So how does, and that's in a certain sense entropic. So how does transhumanism, deal with that if it is a philosophy of evolution? That's the question.
Well, it is a philosophy of evolution. It looks at it slightly differently, not the Richard Dawkins selfish gene perspective, although that's quite interesting, but it looks at evolution. There is survival of the fittest it has happened, but it's kind of not nice, is it? I mean, do you like survival of the fittest? Does that mean that your neighbor
regardless
can
of whether it's
force
nice or not,
survive because they're not
regardless of
fit?
whether it's nice or not, it's an evolutionary function. I mean, the idea would be.
But does it still need to be?
I mean, if you were to
Does it
respond to
need to
that,
be?
you would say that transhumanism recognizes that evolution can be manipulated, right? So it's not just an evolutionary philosophy, it's that we have an ethical position on evolution, which you just said is not nice. So transhumanism has to take a stance and say that one of the fundamental kind of driving forces of evolution in nature, right, is death. And therefore the human separates itself from nature by saying that it can control death. So that's what then transhumanism has to put itself forward.
It already has. It's professed that in the philosophy
I know.
for decades. I mean, that's a.
Yeah, but then. Okay, so then it's so okay, fair enough. But then it's I suppose you answered it by saying it's a philosophy of evolution that is different to say the billions, well, 3 billion years of life evolution on Earth.
Well, the dinosaurs didn't want to die, but they
I don't think they knew whether they wanted
an asteroid
to die
hit the
or not.
Earth, and then the Earth was covered with dust, and they didn't have any oxygen
But the point
to
is, you're
breathe.
using an example of non-conscious. I don't think dinosaurs did actually know that they wanted to die or not. I don't think you can tell me whether the dinosaurs do.
My dog's conscious. Okay?
The point is that
I
humans
don't
can. And I
put
understand
consciousness
that's
just on humans. I think that's a very human-centric yeah.
But you're also assuming. I'm not going to.
Yeah, I think
going to go
I don't
but I
think
think we
dinosaurs
agree
wanted
that
their
the
babies
point
to
is-
die. The issue of death, redefining death is a big issue, and that's a core item of thought and debate and discussion amongst transhumanists for a long time. And there is an issue of the heat death of the universe, and entropy is necessary for balance. You have to have, a decay is going to happen, and so it's more about a balance. If there's too much entropy, then we all die. But if there's a balance, then it's okay. There's entropy going on right now in your body. Some of your cells are dying, and you could have a disease you don't even know about. So you're undergoing entropy right now, but at the same time, you're going through, a difference with that, and the homeostasis of your body. Your biology is trying to balance out the mutations that are going on right now on a molecular scale within your cells by your immune system. So your immune system is constantly trying to balance out the entropy that's going on within your cells, with your cells maybe not functioning well enough, or getting a virus, or some kind, something that's going on. That's constantly going on in our bodies. So what we're really talking about is homeostasis. And we have systems, open systems and closed systems, and they have to balance. So it's a very fine balancing. And it just even gravity, the fact that our Earth is here and we're, swirling around the sun and all the planets are aligned. If that gravity on any of the planets in our solar system were to shift just a little, we would all smash. So there's this incredible balance that continues with gravity in our solar systems, with our planets, and in cosmology, and even on the microscopic nanoscale within atoms and protons and neutrons, constantly entropy and extropy. So, I mean, you have positive charge and negative charge, but they balance out. So, but just, that's why I said there'd be definitions of death. People don't have to live forever. They want to die, that's fine. So there'll still be death, but there'll be different types of death. Maybe someone will decide, I don't want to live anymore. I'd rather just become a statue or a memory. That may be their choice. People may just say they don't want to do it. But the issue with transhumanism is that that should be something that's on the table to discuss, rather than the human historically and evolutionary been given this time frame, a shelf life that we all accept. You go through purity, you have sex, you reproduce, you grow old, and you die. Period. The end. That's it. Everyone accepted it. Death and taxes. Death. But there's always historically equally on the same side of that. While we have accepted death, there's always been writings going back to the Taoists, going way back to the Sumerians about overcoming death. Nikolai Fedorov, excuse me, Jean, what's his name? Jean, I can't remember his last name, maybe it was something Jean. These in the 1800s and the 1700s, 1600s, you go back into before Christ, BC, there were talks about how to overcome death and writings. So maybe that overcoming is what's needed to spur ideas. I don't know. Some people say you need to have death to have life. Some people say you need pain to be creative. And I'm not a Van Gogh person who says, well, Van Gogh suffered and he created the best art in the world. I didn't like his art, frankly. And he suffered from mental illness because he aged paint. He would put the paintbrush with the oil paint, the pigment with the linseed oil and varnish in his mouth as he'd use one brush, put another one. That's going to cause some kind of brain damage, don't you think? Those chemicals. So, you know, we hold up these martyrs and say, oh, we have to suffer to be great. Artists will never become successful until after you're dead. That's what I was told when I was in art school. You'll never, you have to, you know, just relax. When after you're dead, you'll become famous. Well, I don't want to become famous. I just want to do work. I don't, you know, I want my work to be exhibited. I don't want to have to, you know, I just thought that's so silly to tell artists that. And so I think we make too much out of things that 50 years from now we'll go back. Why did they? It's like cutting off female genitalia. In some countries, to cut off the clitoris is accepted. It's enforced, it's mandatory. How many of you think that's okay? I mean, really? That in some areas of the world, that's okay. So it's, at some level, common sense comes in. It's not okay for people who want to live to be told that you go to your doctor and you have cancer and the cancer is metastasized and the doctor says, I'm sorry, there's no more we can do. Go home, here's some morphine and go home and die. And people accept that. But what if next year, 3 years from now, 5 years from now, there is a cure for that disease, that cancer, that whatever that caused? You would have thought, oh God, I wish my husband or my partner or my best friend just could have hung on another year and there's a cure. So that's an issue that ties into the death thing. It's not just death as a word. It's all the elements that go along with death and disease and loss and on the other side of that, human ingenuity and creativity and purposefulness and wanting to help humanity. And right now, I think larger than death is becoming a more humane humanity, becoming standing up for something. I mean, why don't artists around the world stand up and say, enough of this, enough? Where's that movement? In the past, in the arts, and when I was growing up and as an artist, we used to have movements. There were arts movements that fought against stupidity in society, whether it was social laws and regulations or political dictums. I remember when Martin Luther King was assassinated, I formed an art march in Memphis, Tennessee, and we marched down the streets. I mean, it's, you know, it's, where is that? So now most artists want to be influencers and be on social media. I mean, come on. Let's get back to the real art, you know? Okay.
Let's see, one last question, but I also wanted to just, because the Van Gogh and the eating paint just made me think of Bataille's essay on him staring at Van Gogh staring at the sun and going mad. And this sort of like excess burning vision or on the retina, and like we've been staring at the screen. And
I know.
The screen,
and I was going blind, so I have false lenses on my eyes, so it doesn't bother me as much as it does because you all have biological eyes and I've got artificial lenses. So yeah, well.
Felice says that this final Felice question, and then we will.
Okay.
Yeah, hi Natasha. Thank you so much just for an incredible conversation today. So it just on so many levels just raises so many questions, and that's a good thing. It's a great thing. And I'm going to leave it on this because, and I think you've addressed it, but the death issue brings up so many questions for me. I just had a dear colleague and friend pass away recently, prematurely, who was an artist. So, you know, all of these conversations about that subject has made me think about her. And one of the last things supposedly she said was something about how there was so much more work to do. So, you know, your comments are really affecting me in that regard. On the other hand, I think about death. And the thing is, I also thought about your comments about fear, because there is a fear of death, because we don't ultimately know what's on the other side. So to me, there's a paradox there about wanting to overcome that, because we don't know what that has to offer. So it's really not so much a question to put you on such a spot, because it's a larger question, but it's raised so many things for me today. And I just wanted to thank you for such a great discussion. Thank you.
Thank you. And, you know, I'd love for someone who's been dead for maybe a century or 40 years to, you know, who's been to the other side to come back and tell us, you know, then we would have more information. Yeah, there is everyone's afraid of death and everyone accepts it. So it's kind of, yeah, it's a dichotomy. It's a big paradox. Thank you for your wise words. And I'm sorry about your friend. And if you have questions still, and you still don't understand transhumanism, because I know it's been so misconstrued. There's one transhumanism, there's one philosophy. There's different ways people practice it, just like with anything. Christianity, there's one Christianity, and then there's Lutheranism, Protestants, you know, there's all different, you know, belief systems within it. There's one transhumanism, and there's one core belief. Christians believe in Christ. Transhumanism believes in life. So there's different belief systems as far as politics and this and gender and sex, you know, there's all sorts of transgender, gays, lesbians, heterosexuals. No one argues, it's all fine, no one cares, that's your choice. And that's the beauty of it. It's no one size fits all, but the bottom line is that it's mindful and healthy. And by healthy, I don't mean just physically healthy. The core element is constantly evolving and changing and growing for it's so hard getting these terms positive, let's say healthy, well-being, mindfulness. So it's kind of spiritual in that sense, even though there's that dichotomy between technology and spirituality. I don't think so. I think that technology has been used to help improve the human condition since the beginning of time. And it's been used wrongfully, to be sure, by people who lack that consciousness or humanity, insanity. And that's very dystopian and entropic. It's unfortunate, but that's, you know, hopefully there'll be an AI that can spot it early on and help with that. But humans are not capable of doing it. We failed. No religion, no meditation, no prayer, nothing so far in the world for as long as we've been on this planet have helped us overcome this. So something else has got to give. And that's what the post-human hopefully will be able to do. Hopefully. Because if this is all there is, ooh. Okay, namaste. I'm going to go now.